To the shed, and this is where we look at retro things from the past which you can now buy very cheaply. Most things I look at cost less than 20 UK pounds. Right, what we've got in today is a rather nice viewfinder camera from the late 1960s. This is a Helena Paulette, or Paulette. I'm never really quite sure on the correct pronunciation, but we'll call it Paulette. The Helena Paulette electronic camera. There was two versions of this camera available. There was the basic Paulette and the electronic. Now you might be thinking, wow, you know, the electronic's going to be full of fantastic modern gadgetry, but no, in actual fact it wasn't. It didn't even have a battery. The only difference between the two cameras is that with the electronic you had this selenium cell here which powered an EV light meter on the top of the camera, and on the more basic camera you went without that. Made in Hong Kong, as I say, introduced around 1967, went on in production up until around 1974, where it was replaced by the Helena 3000. I don't know the exact number of the units produced, but you can count these in the hundreds of thousands. Very mass produced camera. It was sold under other names as well as Helena. Dixon's in the UK actually sold their version as the Prinz Mastermatic 3, which was quite a nice glamorous title. But there you go. So what do you get? Well, it's a basic camera, but you got a 45mm f2.8 lens, and as I say, you've got no autofocus on this camera. It's not a range camera, so you've just got a guesstimatic focusing system, which seems a bit archaic these days, but so what you'd have to do is you'd have to guess your distance of your subject, we'll say 15 feet. But what is quite good actually is, if we go a little bit closer on this camera here, I don't know if you can make it out, you actually do have a depth of field scale either side there, which does allow you to get a little bit creative, which is quite good, because a lot of these sort of fairly instamatic cameras, you didn't have that available. I mean, I'm thinking of things like the Olympus Trip, although it's a superior camera, you didn't actually have that kind of depth of scale. You couldn't even adjust the actual shutter speed. It's a leaf shutter, and it's a 4-speed shutter on this camera, ranging from 1/30th up to a top maximum of 1/250th of a second. And also you've got B-stop as well, which again allows you to get a little bit more creative than perhaps you wouldn't normally have done. So as I mentioned, you have this rather nice EV light meter here, and the way you would actually set this, it's quite clever in its own respect. First thing would be you would insert your film. On the back here you have the ASA setting, which is the equivalent of your modern ISO setting, ranged from 25 up to 400, so you would set that to the actual film you were going to use. As I say, you would guesstimatic your focus, and then you had two choices. First thing you would do is you would read the little number here on the light meter. It ranges from 7 to 17. It's a little dark, you just about make that out. So for example, let's say it's a little bit dark in the shed, but we'll say you had it set at about 12, which I find that, you know, normal overcast daylight, that's basically what you get. So once you've set your distance scale on a lens there, you then had a choice. Now, depending on your subject matter, if your subject matter was actually moving, then you might wish to set a faster shutter speed. So for example, we go to the maximum, 250th of a second, and then you had this very small little EV aperture window here, which has got these little red numbers, and then you'd quite simply just set the aperture until it corresponded to the number on the light meter, in this case 12, and that would give you a f5.6, and that's it. The camera, the camera's set. Quite simple, really. If you wanted to go the other way, for example, if you were perhaps doing portrait photography and you wanted to actually throw the background out of focus, well, you might choose a slightly wider aperture, maybe f4 or even f2.8, and then of course you would have to try and get the corresponding number there to match by increasing the shutter speed, which you go to its maximum. You may or may not, depending on your speed of the film, be able to do that, but it did give you the option anyway of being a little bit more creative than you might normally have been able to have been. You have got a shoe here for the flash. It's not a hot shoe, so it relies on the rather older PC socket, which is just down here. Its maximum flash sync is at the lowest shutter speed of 1/30th of a second, so it's not exactly particularly quick. It does have a threaded remote release there for your old-fashioned release if you want, and also you have got on the back here, you have got a inbuilt tripod mount. Rather strange is your film counter, which is actually set into the bottom of the camera. Most cameras would have it on the top there, so you could actually view it more easily. These on the bottom, even the later cameras, the Helena 2000 and the Helena 3000, this disc actually continued, which was a little strange. You had the ratchet release there, which you would hold that in while you rewind your film, allowing the film to rewind. So that's really, about it. So they got Helena cameras in general, tended to get quite a bit of stick, probably sort of in the late 80s, early 90s. People sort of, treated them sort of trash cameras, but I've actually found them quite nice, and considering nowadays where everything is basically plastic, and if you drop it, it's likely to break. What you get here is you do get a rather nice, mainly actually metal and glass camera. I mean, certainly, like for example, the focusing ring here on the lens turns rather nice and smoothly, and this is actually a machined aluminium ring, which is quite nice. So it's all, as I say, it's all nice and metal, and you have this leatherette sort of finish. So today's market is actually, I think anyway, it actually feels like almost like a premium camera. To buy one of these, your best bet, I should think, is probably eBay now. You might get one at a car boot sale if you're lucky, or perhaps a charity shop. Try to get one with a case. It's rather a basic hard case, but if you get one with a case, they tend to be in slightly better condition. Prices, well, expect to pay anything from maybe a couple of pounds for a slightly ropey one, up to maybe £10 or £12 for one that's sort of in this condition. Bearing in mind these are actually over 40 years old. Put a film in it, run it through, you can have quite a lot of fun with one of these, and I think for the price of a pizza, it's rather a nice buy.